We begin tonight with a little remembered piece of Maine history.
Every 4 years, we elect a governor, and about 2 months later, the governor is sworn into office. Always predictable, even if the election results are not. But once in a while, that routine gets tangled up. 207's Don Kerrigan is here with a story of a year unlike any other. Hey, Don.
Hi, folks. It was a year, at least politically, unlike any other. It's a fascinating story 64 years ago because of strange mix of politics, chance, and yes, tragedy. It was a year Maine had 4 different people filling the governor's chair.
I, Janet Trachton Mills.
Do swear.
Paul Richard LePage, do swear.
It happens once every 4 years. That and politics are why the inauguration of a governor is such a big deal in Maine.
But here in the State House is the record of a year unlike any other when it comes to swearing in governors. The year Maine had 4 of them, and it all began with Ed Muskie.
It was 1959, and then Governor Ed Muskie, the last to be sworn into a 2-year term, had been elected to the U.S. Senate. He decided to leave office early to get a jump on his new Senate career.
Seniority in terms of committee assignments and everything is when you're sworn in.
Harold Pacius began working in Maine politics in the early 1960s and became close to Muskie.
And so he was told, get sworn in before the other freshmen. And he did.
Muskie, the Democrat, officially resigned January 2nd, and under Maine's Constitution, Robert Haskell, the president of the state Senate, became governor.
Bob Haskell's portrait may be hanging here in the State House, but he wasn't governor for very long.
After serving just 6 days, Haskell was replaced by Democrat Clinton Clausen, who had been elected governor in November. Clausen was inaugurated as Maine's 66th governor, the first ever elected to a 4-year term. The oath of office administered to Clausen by the new president of the state Senate, John Reed.
Remember that name. Clinton Clausen was a Democrat with a House and Senate controlled by Republicans, but they all went on through 1959 working as usual.
Until the end of the year, until December 30th, when Governor Clausen suddenly died.
She called Jeb, and he ran over from his next door house.
Harold Pacius says he later got to know Jeb Byrne, Governor Clausen's former press secretary, who had to play a crucial role that night.
Jeb Byrne called John Reed. He said he was at his home in Fort Fairfield, and he said, Senator, you're now the governor. The governor has died.
When I got a call in the very tail end of 1959 from Jeb Byrne, his press secretary.
20 years ago, John Reed shared his memory of that night with our Bill Green.
This is at 4:30 in the morning. Well, at that hour, you know it's something serious. The governor died this morning. I was going to get up at 5:30 to get ready to load a carload of potatoes. Like I say, everything was going to change. And the state trooper picked me up that morning.
Maine awoke to the tragic news on December 30th. Governor Clinton A. Clausen had died in his sleep at the Executive Mansion in Augusta.
I, John H. Reed, President of the Senate.
I, John H. Reed, President of the Senate.
And shortly after, Mainers got to hear their new governor take over.
Designated by the Constitution to assume the office of governor.
Designated by the Constitution to assume the office of governor.
The state senator and potato farmer from Aroostook was Maine's 4th governor that year. Mainers filed through the State House to pay their respects to Clausen and to come to grips with the loss of one governor and the sudden change to another. Former Senator and Secretary of State Bill Diamond was only a kid then, but says it must have all caused turmoil.
It upset the state government, as I say, turmoil no doubt back then, but if that happened today, it would be an unbelievable how dysfunctional it would become.
But Harold Pacius thinks that in 1959 and 1960, it wasn't that bad.
The politicians in both parties were really thought they all had the same job, which was to get something done that was positive for people. And so there wasn't as much of this party acrimony.
It had been a remarkable year, unprecedented really, but state government moved on and kept working. 1959 remains really a historical oddity in Maine, a year when tragedy cut one governor's time short and propelled two others through politics and chance into an office they had never sought.
I got to know Haskell pretty well in a few years after that, and he was the president of Bangor Hydroelectric, and in his office, his chair behind his desk was a governor's chair. It had the seal of the state of Maine on it, and he couldn't have spent more than 6 days in his governor's office, but there was the chair. They gave him the chair.
It's a footnote to a year-long story of the year Maine had 4 governors.
It is a fascinating story. John Reed went on to serve out Clausen's term and then was elected to one term on his own before losing a re-election bid to Democrat Ken Curtis. And of course, we all know that Ed Muskie, who started this sequence of events, went on to an incredibly distinguished national career as U.S. Senator, candidate for Vice President, and ultimately Secretary of State.
I don't think we're ever going to see that again, Don, for a long, long time.
Well, obviously, I mean, certainly the tragedy part, we hope not. Right. And the rest, I mean, the chances of all that happening, pretty slim.
Yeah. Thanks, Don.
Okay.